Hey, what's going on guys? It's Moto, and in today's episode we're going to be installing the Ricochet skid plate on my Yamaha TW200. So I picked up this skid plate from ProCycle's website for $89, but you can also get it from Ricochet's website for just under $100, and you can also get it anodized in a couple of different colors. So the tools you're going to need for this job, you're going to need a 10mm socket wrench to remove the stock skid plate. You're also going to want a 14mm to install the new hardware. I also picked up a crescent wrench, a mallet to bend in the stock bracket for the skid plate, and I also picked up a torque wrench. I also picked up some Loctite, that's just some regular blue Loctite, and I'm also going to need a T40 Torx Bit. Alright, and I also picked up this, I'm not really sure what it's called, but it basically allows you to get a socket into hard to reach areas, and you're going to need this when installing the skid plate. Alright, and that's basically it for the tools, so let's go ahead and remove the stock skid plate. Alright, and to remove your stock skid plate, you just need to remove this bolt right here, and that's a 10mm bolt. And once you remove this bolt, the whole plate just comes and falls right out, just like that. Alright, so this is the difference between the stock skid plate. It's very thin, it's got a bunch of holes, and it doesn't cover a lot. And then this is the Ricochet aftermarket skid plate. And as you can see, it's much thicker. It's not too heavy. And they've also included some fins to protect the side of the engine, as well as a little hole here to drain your oil. So as you can tell, it's definitely meant to last a lot longer than the stock skid plate, and I think it'll provide a lot better protection. Alright, and what's nice about this skid plate is it comes with instructions, just like this. So the next thing you want to do is remove the bolt that secures the front of the motor to the frame. And that's this bolt right here. And so the two bolts you need to remove, this is the right hand side of the engine, and this is the first one. This is a 14mm. Alright, and then here on the left hand side of the engine, this is the other bolt you're going to want to hold. And to do that, I'm just going to use my crescent wrench, just like this. Alright, I'm going to have my buddy hold the bolt on that side, just so you guys can see better. But you can also use a socket, but I did not have one. And let's go ahead. And it's a little bit tight, but it does come right off. Alright, so this is the nut and washer that come off on this side, and then sometimes you can just take a little rubber mallet. Alright, I'm just going to use a screwdriver and hit it the rest of the way out. And it just falls right out. So the Ricochet skid plate does come with a bolts and nuts that you're going to need for this installation, but it's a good idea to keep these just in case. Alright, so the next thing to do is install your L brackets that are provided with your kit. And you're also going to need to install your new bolt that goes right here where you removed your old one. And to do this, you want to go ahead and line up your L bracket just like this and install the bolts. And you want to make sure that one washer is on the outside, installing it just like this. And then installing it into your engine mounting bracket like that. Alright, so this bolt is a little bit hard to get in. I tried hitting it with my mallet, but that didn't work. So I'm just going to hit it with a little hammer. And I want to be gentle because I don't want to mar it up. And once you've gotten this bolt in a pretty good amount, you can go ahead and go to the other side and put the L bracket on that side. Alright, and moving over to the other side, you want to go ahead and install your L bracket. And then you want to install your washer. And then go ahead and install your locking nut. And when screwing this in, you might feel a little bit of tension, and that's just because of the nylock collar that's in this nut. Alright, once you've gotten the bolt through the engine mounting bracket, and you've gotten these L brackets on, go ahead and snug them down. And this is actually a 13mm nut on both sides. And I just have my friend holding the crescent wrench right here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the socket. And you want to loosely tighten this. You don't want to go too crazy because you need to be able to adjust it later. Alright, and that should be good. Alright, and so the next thing to do is you want to go ahead and bend the old bracket for the stock skid plate right here. And you can either cut it or bend it, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a hammer and push it upwards. Alright, and so I know it's a little hard to see, I do apologize, but the next thing you want to do is remove these little bolts on the L clamps, because you're going to be installing the skid plate now. So you want to remove that, make sure you don't lose the washer. Same thing on this side. And as you can tell, this one's still a little loose, but that's okay because I'm going to need to adjust it. All right, now that you have those bolts removed, you want to go ahead and line up these holes right here to the holes on the skid plate. And just hand thread it for right now. And when installing these bolts, just make sure you put a little bit of blue Loctite on them. This prevents any of the engine vibrations from knocking these guys loose. All right, so the next thing to do is go ahead and install these clamps on your frame. And essentially it's just gonna fall right on your frame just like that. And line them up with the holes on the skid plate. Just about right there. And once those are on, go ahead and lift the skid plate up. And you're gonna take your bolts right here and just thread them into place. And it's kind of a pain to get them to hook on, but once they're on, they thread properly. You don't need to hold the other side. And just get it until it stops, just like that. And move to this side. Adjust your skid plate to how you want it. And just thread the bolts into place. And I forgot to mention, but before you put these bolts in, make sure you just put a little bit of blue Loctite on them. This way, with the vibrations, they don't come undone. All right, so once you've gotten those back clamps installed, I haven't snugged anything down yet. I want to just make sure it looks good, make sure it's fitting properly. And once you go ahead and make sure that it does look good, go ahead and start with the top and tighten those down. Once again, this is a 13 millimeter. All right, once those top bolts are nice and snug, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these bottom ones the rest of the way. Once again, using a T40 Torx Bit. And make sure to go nice and slow because they do strip pretty easily and they are really tight. All right, so now that everything's snugged up, the last thing you wanna do is go ahead and tighten down the bolt that is connected to the engine bracket. And the torque spec for this is 24 foot-pounds. Got my friend holding on that side, the 13 millimeter over here, torquing it down to 24 foot-pounds. Wait for the click, and you hear it. We'll do one more time. And that should be perfect. And one other thing that the T-Dubs kid brought up, it's a good idea to put this little bolt back. This was the bolt for your original skid plate, and you never know when this might come in handy. All right, so overall the install for the skid plate went well. I'm lucky that I had a couple extra hands to help me out. Installing the bolts wasn't hard, but you just want to make sure you don't strip them. They are a little bit tough to get in. You also want to make sure you install blue Loctite properly on all of the bolts. And a couple tools that I ended up using, but I didn't mention them earlier in the video. I ended up using a little hammer just to knock in that bolts for the engine bracket. Instead of using this T40 Torx, I ended up going with this, and it just provided a little more mechanical advantage because I can put it on a ratchet. I also used this wrench right here, and this just helped me get into the hard to reach area by the skid plate. So let's head on the bike and test this skid plate out. All right, so I set up this little block over here, and I'm hoping to bottom out, which isn't something you normally hear, but I want to test it out and see how rugged it is, so let's see what we can do. And there you go. That worked perfectly. So let me put it in neutral. We'll check it out. So first of all, wow, it's on there secure. Okay, we'll leave that there. Got a camera there, so hopefully you guys can get a good view. And so as you can tell, the skid plate is clearly doing its job. It's protecting it properly. And let's take the bike off and see the damage. All right, and let's go ahead and rock ourselves off this. Bring yourselves back down. All right, let's take a look at the skid plate. And as you can tell, the skid plate took a little bit of damage, but it's mostly just scuffed up. And to be completely honest, off-roading, I'm hoping to not hit the skid plate that hard, but it's good to know that if I do, it'll hold up. So let's head back on the bike and talk about it a little more. All right, so I'm just leaving work now. I finished up the skid plate install, and I think it went really well. It definitely helps having another set of hands, just making sure all the clamps are proper and all the bolts are in place, but you can certainly do it by yourself. The install itself took less than an hour, and honestly, it's mostly just because I had to move around the camera and the lighting. But if you guys aren't videotaping your install or anything like that, it should only take probably like 20 minutes. And so the only things to consider with this skid plate, you want to make sure you put blue Loctite on those bolts. You want to make sure they're tightened down properly. You also want to make sure you torque down the engine bolts, that bracket bolt that goes in between everything. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. They give good directions, and hopefully if you had any other questions on the install, this video will help answer it. So I've heard a couple people on forums and on videos talking about the noise that this skid plate produces, and to be quite honest, I really don't hear that. You know, if anything, there might be a little bit of like a deeper tone, but nothing really noticeable. You know, I heard some people that were complaining about the rattling and the engine noises, and I mean, I guess you could kind of see that, but it's definitely nothing that you should be concerned about. And considering the protection that this skid plate offers, I think it far exceeds those noise problems that you might be hearing. And if you're doing any type of serious off-roading, I definitely recommend it. I was reading some like horror stories on the forums about how this guy, I guess, had like cracked the side of his engine when he was off-roading, and so he, you know, highly recommended getting the skid plate as one of the first modifications, especially if you plan on taking this bike off-road. If you're like me, you know, I mostly commute with this bike, even though I'd love to take it off-road more often, then it may not be the first thing you want to do to the bike, but I definitely recommend it as probably one of the top 5 mods to start with on the TW200. For only 90 bucks, you can really save yourself a lot of money. You know, if you end up messing up your engine or anything like that, that can get pretty costly. ProCycle's website was super easy. You know, I added it to cart, I selected my shipping, and I checked out. And with shipping included, I think it was just over 100 bucks, and it came in like 3 days. If you're looking for any Yamaha TW200 parts, whether it be the skid plate or handguards or handlebars or whatever you're looking for, I highly recommend ProCycle's website. I'm not affiliated with them by any means, but I just highly recommend their stuff, and their customer service seems to be pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, it was just a quick video, and I apologize to some of the subscribers that remembered me saying, you know, I do the skid plate a couple of weeks back. I'm happy that you guys are paying attention like that, and I do apologize for not doing this sooner. But now that it's done, let me know what you guys want next. I purchased a rear rack, so that should be coming hopefully soon, and I'll be able to make a video on it either this week or next week. So if you'd like to see anything special done on this bike, you can certainly send me a message on Instagram or comment on YouTube. But anyways, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and ride safe.